Hello, hello. Buenas tardes. How are you guys? We're live again. Here, Gerardo Macias, el headhunter with Staffbridge in Monterrey. And today we have a very special guest. Before that, let me introduce you to Justine Cebe, our sales manager for Staffbridge International. How are you, Justine?
Hi, good afternoon. Hi, I'm doing good. And you?
Great. You're all the way to Guadalajara,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes, that's right.
Today. And as I mentioned before, today we have Matthew Myers. He has his own law firm in San Antonio. How are you, Matt?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for your time, for being here. And today we have a very interesting topic for sure. And recently we started synergy with Matt and Staffbridge in terms of talent mobility from Mexico to the US and, of course, also from Latin America. So, Matt, please introduce yourself.
Well, I'm Matthew Myers. I'm practicing in San Antonio. I focus my practice on business and investor immigration, so work visas and investor visas, and focusing on the short and the long term as well, making sure that what we do in the short term is sustainable for the long term. So I work with a lot of U.S. businesses, and we made this connection recently because all that I'm hearing is I can't find anyone locally for really every type of job in the United States at this point. It doesn't seem to be discriminating, and it could be confirmation bias because that's when my clients reach out to me.
Perfect. And Justine, as well, please tell us a bit more about yourself.
Yes, hi. So as you mentioned, I'm working as a sales manager for Staffbridge International. Staffbridge International is a branch of Staffbridge which is dedicated to helping international clients in Mexico and also Mexican companies that need to have recruitment in the US or other countries. In particular, we are developing a service to help US companies looking for talent who can go to the US and help with the worker shortage that the US is facing at the moment. So that's something we've been working on, and that's why we connected with Matt a few weeks ago to be able to support in that service, not only in Mexico, but also through Latin America and Central America, according to where our clients think the best talent can be, and developing into helping. I read today an article actually saying there's a 4.3 million worker shortage in the US at the moment, and it's not getting better. The economy is getting better after the pandemic, but unfortunately the worker shortage is not getting any better. If anything, it's getting worse.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so I'm sure we're going to have a very interesting conversation and, of course, questions and comments from our audience. So feel free to say hi, tell us where you're from, and of course, feel free to make questions to Matt as you wish. So let's start with the main topic here, and with a little bit more information from Matt. We actually have some suggestions from him. So let's start with the type of visas that you can get in order to work in the U.S., specifically for Mexico and Latin America. I mean, what's the easiest way to do that? And is it with a company or through you guys? How does it work?
Yeah, that's a good question. Half the time I have U.S. companies come to me saying I am trying to hire internationally for this position, but I'm afraid of the immigration side of things. And by the way, do you know where I could find an international recruiter to help me find someone? And usually I say, Google it or good luck. I'm not a staffing company or recruiting company. And then but employers are thinking, about the global marketplace for labor, whether it's professional or otherwise, and not, if they're not able to find the United States, then they want to make sure they're looking globally, but it's difficult for a small U.S. employer to do that. That doesn't have operations in another country. It's daunting. And then the other side is they have perhaps a recent graduate from a local university that they want to hire, and they want to know, the right pathway to do it. And I like the way that you phrase that. What's the easiest way? So for a U.S. company wanting to hire someone, the default professional visa that most people have heard of is called the H-1B, but there's a limited number of those available annually. There's a lottery process. I had a consultation yesterday where I was explaining to them that the earliest possible start date could be October 1st of next year, which is, 10 months away, and that's just not doable. And so if we're focusing on Latin America, Mexico under the USMCA, formerly NAFTA, has the TN visa, which is readily available as long as you fit under one of the occupations that's listed on the NAFTA. And then Chileans have the H-1B1, which is a treaty that they have with Singapore as well, included in that option. And that one's very, very similar to H-1B. It's kind of a limited, there's some limitations to it, but basically just need to prove that the position requires a bachelor's degree and that the person has a bachelor's degree. And so those are the quote unquote top two easiest ways. Absent, there's some other things we could talk about too, though.
Great. Yeah, I mean, being Mexican, it's always daunting. I mean, we're so close to the U.S. here in Monterrey and many other parts of the country, but it's always difficult just to think about working in the U.S. because we know there's this huge process even to get a tourist visa, but actually there are great opportunities for professionals to go to the U.S. and work. Justine, I know that you have some questions, and of course, let me mention that we already have a client, thanks to you, Matt. Justine is doing a search for a client in the U.S., so that's also interesting, just to think about new commercial synergies between both countries. Go ahead, Justine.
Well, yes, we're actually looking for veterinarians at the moment, willing to go to the United States. It's quite an interesting research we're doing at the moment, and we're already meeting quite a few candidates that are willing and interested to move to the US. And I think that's one of the great advantage for the US companies, especially with Mexico. They're so close to the US. We are so close to the US, and this also the kind of synergy in culture. They're aware of the culture in the US. Most people, they've learned English, and they see going to the US as an opportunity to grow professionally, at least for a while. And I think that's definitely something that can bring also a good solution to the US in that sense, with the shortage we talked about. And also, I think with every company is going global nowadays, right? I mean, with the pandemic, we also opened so many doors with working all over the world. And I think bringing people from different countries also adds to the benefits of a company. And I say that as an expat who currently lives in Mexico. So I can definitely, in my side as well, see the benefit of that, and what would be the advantage for someone to go to another country and learn some more. I would say the questions for me to you, Matt, would be more in the sense of, as a company, they come to you, they say, okay, I need to hire someone from Mexico because I don't have anyone here in the US that will match what I need. What are the steps? What can you do for me? What would be the first thing they need to know about in order to make this work?
Well, the questions that I have when someone comes to me are, what's the citizenship of the person you're hiring? Give me the job description for the position. If you, get a CV resume. If you're talking about an employer who doesn't have someone in mind, then I would just ask for the job description and talk to them about whether or not that fits under either the TN, if we're talking about Mexico, or Canada. And to do that, I pull up the list of occupations that are listed under the NAFTA, which anyone can Google. And it may be interesting if people listening to this to Google if their occupation is on there. But sometimes it's readily clear. I want to hire an engineer, and engineer's listed right there. But other times, job titles in this modern world don't readily fit what is the default or general occupation. So we have to, talk through what the government considers that occupation and how it fits with what they actually want, and fit it all together to see if we can find a good strategy. And that's just TN, for example. The H-1B and the H-1B1 for Chileans, with the H-1B being that default professional visa.
Yes.
We are open to a wider range of occupations. The NAFTA has about 70 listed, but there are hundreds that could qualify for H-1B. There's a little bit more flexibility there, or H-1B1.
And do you think there's an opening on, because Gerardo mentioned before that, for Mexicans, sometimes it's daunting, the idea of a visa and getting the possibility to work in the US. And while as a French person, it's easy enough to get a visa to come as a tourist to work, it's as daunting as it can get, because the US has a very complicated process. Would you say there's a sign of opening up in that sense, or making it a bit easier, or possibilities to make it easier given the shortage and the possibilities of bringing people from other countries?
I don't know if it's getting necessarily easier, but I think it's less difficult than people think.
Okay.
The TN is a great benefit that Mexicans have to be able to basically prepare an application packet and apply directly at the consulate without making a filing with U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services in the United States. And the two legal elements are you in an occupation, with the appropriate qualifications that's listed under the NAFTA, and do you have a job offer? So it's relatively straightforward from that perspective. Compared to, people are surprised, the UK and continental Europe. You mentioned being from France. There's not a special professional visa for you all. You have to deal with the H-1B, and all of it's fun. And I often hear, well, they're from the UK. Those, they're our best friends. Why are you telling me I have to wait 10 months and you're saying it's only a 30% likelihood because of the lottery? For H-1B qualifications. What I have done for French citizens and for citizens that don't have, outside of Mexico and Chile, there are a number of countries that have a treaty with the United States that allows citizens of that country to work for companies that are 50% owned by other citizens of their country, or if they want to be an entrepreneur and start a business, that could work too. And so I've, through one of the French American chambers, I actually had a client, and I'm sorry to use the French American chamber. It could have been the Ecuadorian American chamber, or another Latin American country with a similar treaty. And they were readily aware of all of the, companies that had worked with them to move to the United States, to be able to say, if, I thought that was kind of a good opportunity to say, hey, you need to start telling French citizens, if they want a job in the United States, that these companies can hire them as managers, executives, or special skills employees readily. And that's the same for Mexico and Chile and maybe a dozen countries in Latin America.
That's really good to know as well.
Good, good. Thanks, Matt. Now, it's important to mention that, I mean, these collaboration that we have and many others that you, Matt, have with your clients, of course, are not to um, take away jobs from Americans. I mean, it's a different perspective. It's always about collaboration and making more rich, I guess, the job market for everyone. What can you say about that?
There are all sorts of data and study that show that every, especially employment-based, non-immigrant or immigrant, generates far more economic benefit to the United States than it takes away. And I, as a as an American, as far back as you can go, look at our history, and innovation comes from immigrant. I mean, that's the whole American dream, is the immigrant dream. So without getting into that, I mean, uh, it's if we're a pro business and pro innovation and pro benefiting our economy, um, having the ability of American companies to be able to choose from the best and the brightest from around the world is important, especially while we remain a world power. It's great that we have many highly qualified individuals who want to come and improve upon the United States. So, uh, yeah, so it's fortunate we have a good number of options based on employment. I'm always open to more. And I know on the campaign trail, one of the things Biden mentioned was giving rural communities the ability to sponsor people, which I thought was a neat idea. And I have come up a lot where they say, I just can't get someone out to my small town. No one will accept the job. And a rural person trying to think globally or think internationally, that's just tough. And so, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I mean, especially from an American. I mean, I at the same time, yeah. I mean, I had the opportunity to study in the U.S. and then work for many years, and it was different 20 years ago. So I'm glad that, I mean, even, I mean, Latinos and Hispanics, their communities are huge in Texas, Michigan, Illinois, California, definitely Florida, but it has changed. So I'm glad to hear that. Justine, you were going to say something, right?
Yeah, I actually had a question because you did send me the list of all the occupations that are listed under the previously named NAFTA. And I was looking at it the other day and I was going through because it's so diverse, right? There's so many jobs that actually go under that agreement. And I was wondering, as an immigration attorney, like which of the jobs you get the most requests about?
I think it's difficult to say, and it seems like it comes in waves. Engineer may be the most common. Management consultant is considered to be, by the immigration authorities, perhaps the most abused occupation because it doesn't require a bachelor's degree. And so everyone who doesn't have a bachelor's degree in the other fields, or who wants to come for business purposes, because there's no real business occupation other than economist, which I've used economist as well, but they've tightened that, saying no, it can't just be you're going to work in a business role. You have to work as an economist, and so they're tightening that. I wish I pulled up the list to really think about it, but it's kind of I would say engineer comes to mind is the most common, but it seems like every other week I talk to someone about a different occupation.
Okay.
Okay. Now, we already talked about this, but you mentioned in our conversation before that there are common questions, like for example, how long will it take to get a visa? I mean, for the process, do you need a sponsor specifically, or I mean, uh,
Yeah,
how
you
is
asked me what's the easiest one, which everyone wants to hear.
that? Yes.
Sometimes and so it really, there is a discussion, as you can imagine, where we kind of go through. I gather all the facts that I can, because it may, over the course of our conversation, and I really need a full hour consultation most of the time, so we can talk through things. Sometimes when there's not a readily apparent path, we find at the 50th minute in, wait a second, you said this, that that means that you actually qualify for this. And so let's see, you'd asked, you're asking me now, how long does it take, or how long can be approved? So the default H-1B is approved for 3 years that I've talked about, and can be extended up to 6 years, during which time, before the 6th year, usually the permanent residency process is underway. For TNs, for Mexican citizens, unfortunately, right now, they're only granting 1-year TN visas, even though they increased the number of years for other visas issued to Mexican citizens to 4 years. And of course, you've got the 10-year visitor visa. But that TN visa stamp is only valid for 1 year. But typically, when someone travels on that TN visa, they U.S. Customs and Border Protection admits the person for 3 years, meaning they can stay and work for that 3-year period. But if they want to travel internationally, they've got to go get another visa. So if there are any Mexican TNs on the call, they know the pain of trying to manage both of those 2 expiration dates.
Yeah, I used to have, well, first I had a student visa, then I had a diplomatic visa because I work for the Mexican government, and then I had a TN visa. Yeah, I remember it was renewed, around every 3 years. I had to come back to Mexico, to the U.S. Embassy. And how much does it cost? I mean, that's another thing. Do the companies usually pay for that? Or, for example, in this case with Justine's client, how does that work?
Well, for TNs in particular, there is no regulation that requires employers to pay the fees. Of course, there's legal fees involved, which I think, relative to the 3-year approval and the salary that a professional is paid, are very nominal. And then the government filing fees are around, and expenses are around $200. So, so it's honestly not that big of an expenditure relative to. I was just talking to someone who paid a recruiter $12,000 to find an American here in town, and they didn't think. I mean, and that's good. Recruiters are great, etc. But
yeah, we are.
they just assumed that the immigration process was going to be too complex and too expensive. But in order for a TN to continue with the TN visa, there needs to be a U.S. company sponsor that's viable, and the TN visa is tied to employment with that company. So, and as you said, it's typically 3 years of employment that's tied to that company, and so the person that works for the person that works for them, the U.S. company, would need to find another U.S. employer and go through the process again, if they want to stay in the United States. And it's very common for TN visa holders to enjoy working for the U.S. company, and have that company sponsor them for permanent residency. And none of that, frankly, the feedback that I usually get is that it's much less daunting and scary and difficult than they imagine.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's an important topic as well. The fact that the company needs to be aware of, but it's not as complicated as it would think, but also, but it is a process, and when the company is really open to it and looking to it as a recruiter, it's much easier as well. It's a topic I've been bringing to the table for quite a few years already, not only in the US, but in general, when I was working back in Italy as well. And a lot of companies, they're not open to the idea, but I'm seeing a bit of a change in that. And I think it's really interesting because when the company puts their mind to it, I feel like finding people that are willing to go and work for them and dedicate years of their life and bring hard skills and soft skills as well. You find them, right? They exist. They are somewhere. They're willing to do it, and it's harder to find companies that understand the process and are willing to go through it to find the right people for their company.
Correct. Now we have a question from our good friend Francisco. We actually had a live with him as well. He's asking, is there a possibility to bring technicians with no bachelor's degree to the US on their special visa?
So there's an occupation called scientific technologist or scientific technician. And so that occupation requires typically an associate's degree or experience. And what's not listed in the NAFTA, if you pull it up, is that it's not readily apparent, is that they need to work under the supervision or direction of someone who is degreed in the field that is their technology or tech. So usually it's an engineer in these cases. So you have a technician working for a U.S. company under the supervision of an engineer. And oftentimes with technicians, they know more than the engineer, but the way that our system is set up, it basically thinks that you need to have an engineer on call in case a engineer level issue arises. That's the one I've seen for the most part with technicians, but depending on the industry, it could be different, where you have someone else with a science, typically a STEM degree, overseeing the scientific technology and a technician.
Okay. Yeah, and I've seen that, by the way, with oil and gas companies,
right,
and energy corporations as well. We work with in California and also in Michigan, by the way. We also have a comment from Eduardo Vega. Thank you, Eduardo. Of course, thank you.
Let me add, the reason why I say that I said engineer was my most common was being in Texas. And I have clients in Michigan as well. It's manufacturing and energy, but then also a number of startup clients out of Austin and San Antonio that engineering occupation is used for computer engineers. The one thing that I was disappointed that didn't get updated in the USMCA, the updated NAFTA, was they didn't add any more computer positions. So the two that we essentially have to fit everyone under are computer systems analyst, which is a very distinct area within computers, or engineer. But we need that. It is common for people to have computer engineering or mechanical, or more common is electrical engineering, that are in the tech field. But those cases are a little bit more difficult. But if they have an engineering degree and they're going to work as a software engineer or something like that, I would use the engineer. And I've done that at startup companies and with energy companies using that scientific technician technologist.
Yeah, I would say the IT sector is a whole other topic as well. because they have their own challenges even in Mexico. So
Sure.
there's definitely
Yeah.
one of the area that is most challenging to us recruiter all over the world.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. But yeah, again, I'm so glad that we're having these kind of conversations, and actually with business going on in terms of headhunting, and it is not that hard. I mean, you just have to be informed and have someone like Matt on your side. We have more comments right now. First from Alejandro de Leon. Well, a question: how long does it take to get a TN visa approved once you get a petition letter, assuming COVID, pandemic, etc.?
Well, it depends on how quickly you can get a TN visa interview. Right now, fortunately, across the U.S. consulates in Mexico, appointments are becoming more readily available.
Mm-hmm.
And so when someone attends that appointment, they're interviewed for a matter of minutes, and then they take the passport and either tell you to come back by the consulate later, or they mail it to a DHL facility within 3 to 5 business days typically. So it's processed pretty quickly once you get the appointment, attend the interview, and give them your passport. What I have seen lately is these emails where not fortunately on any cases that I've handled, but as second opinions, or hey, is everything okay with this? Where the consulate has said, in the pandemic, we're taking additional time to review your case for administrative processing. Administrative processing has always been a thing, but they're blaming the pandemic now, and
Yes.
and so that delays some things when they want to take a further look at it, and they've called the employer in the United States to double check, and they do some more due diligence, and that can delay it by a few weeks or a month or a couple months.
Yeah, even with tourist visas, time is an issue right now. But in this kind of visas, it's faster. I mean, I've seen it in some cases. By the way, Esteban Vaquero. Hi, Esteban. Nice to see you here. What can you tell about a Mexican real estate company who wants to develop in Texas? I think he means to register, open up the business. I mean, we can let you know who can aid you with that. Definitely. I mean, we've done it recently with Justine in Texas, registering Staffbridge in the US. And we can help you with headhunting, and Matt can help you with the rest, right?
Well, I'll tell you the one thing that's tricky about I've got a number of Mexican investor clients who want to buy real estate, and a passive investment in real estate cannot be the basis for an investor visa or for status in the United States. But if it's truly a Mexican real estate development company expanding to the United States, or I have a client right now that's closing up shop in Mexico and going all in the United States, the difficulty is just proving that it's more than just a passive investment, and that it's you're buying several properties rather than just your vacation home in the United States.
That's really interesting, actually, because that's not something we faced personally, because we do recruitment, but we opened our own company together with Future Manager in the US a few months ago, and I have to say, as a French person, I found the US process to be quite easy. I'm used to it being a year or two, and it's not what it is here. But that's interesting about the real estate, because it's definitely a topic.
I'm just talking about the immigration. I'm thinking about the visa, but you're right. You can open a business in minutes, or the Secretary of State, I think, takes a couple of days to do it, but it's very quick. So. Just to be clear, I'm only talking about immigration.
Of course, yes, and even bank accounts. I mean, that's way easier. I mean, and for people from Monterrey, I know Esteban is in Monterrey. It's quite common. Now we have more comments. Carlos Cavada. I just joined in. Why is there a lot of openings in sales nationwide, but none of them with sponsorship? Is it too expensive for the companies to pay for the visa, or there's another reason? Well, you mentioned something earlier, right?
It's very sales, marketing, and business are very difficult. They're not really covered by the TN, and even it's very limited. The government takes a position that a lot of sales jobs don't require a bachelor's degree, absolutely, and so sales engineer. There's some other occupations that aren't on the NAFTA but are on the H-1B. That may be why there's not a clear path available.
I think there's also a point of, because we're currently working with a few companies in the US, recruiting through our US company as well, including a sales position I'm working on at the moment. And there's also a point where the companies, when they're looking for sales, they're looking for someone who's already there, that knows the market and knows the players, already has a portfolio. So it's a lot harder to also get them to the idea of bringing someone from another country. And as someone who's been in sales my whole career and has done that in other countries, it can be very challenging to do sales, especially with a language barrier. And so companies, they see that more as a complication than an actual solution. And I do think that sales is also one of these roles, these job description where there's a lot of people available that are willing to do it, and they move also from one company to another easier. Or what I've been seeing from the industry I'm working on at the moment, that is a technical industry, they'd rather take someone in their company that is a technician and train them in doing sales than actually looking outside, because they need this knowledge and this. So I think in sales, that's also a big point of it. And obviously the fact that the visa is not under the NAFTA agreement doesn't help for sure. I think you're muted.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm in between chats and everything, but we have now questions from Eduardo. Is there a list source where to look to identify Fortune 500 companies that sponsor employees from Latin America? And what percentage of the HB1 visas in 2021 were awarded to Latin Americans?
Interesting question.
It used to be readily available through the Department of Labor website. You could plug in a zip code or an area and the name of the company, and it would show the H-1Bs that were sponsored, and they kind of stopped publishing that data readily. But USCIS puts out data as well. Honestly, all of them are sponsoring people from other countries. The bigger they are, it's a most successful businesses. It's a part of doing business to sponsor international talent. If international talent becomes available, they figure it out. They want the talent.
Yeah, correct. And just like here in Mexico, I mean, we have currently a fintech client, and they bring also U.S. citizens to Mexico as expats. So, I mean, any big company is aware that they have to do that. Eduardo has another comment. I understand that most HB1 visas go to Indians and Asians, then European citizens. Do you have comments? Also, do you see C-level positions based in Miami being sourced to candidates from LATAM, including sponsorship? Well, that's an ample question, but
yes.
Go ahead, Matt.
I'll just say the problem with H-1B is that there's a cap of 65,000 visas available to bachelor's degree holders and an additional 20,000 available if the person has an advanced degree from a U.S. institution. And so we'll say 85,000 new visas are available annually. Fortunately, if someone already has an H-1B visa, they don't need to apply for the lottery every time. But 85,000 visas, and last year it was over 300,000 registrations that were made for those visas. So it just slows down. It creates this backlog and problem. I think the Zoom founder was denied 6, 7, or 8 times under the lottery, and I'm impressed that he didn't go develop his business overseas, which a lot of people end up doing. So I, as an American, don't like the brain drain,
Obviously,
and which happens.
Yeah.
I do want to add, though, because it's frustrating. People think maybe I don't want to try it through the H-1B process, but they've made it a lot simpler and more straightforward to apply under the lottery in March. It's a simpler registration, whereas we had to file the whole petition in the past and just find out with a rejected petition. So used to be where we'd have to incur a lot of legal fees, and now it's a small amount to register.
Yeah, and as for the second part of the question about position for senior VP or VP Latin in Miami, I'm not sure, as it's not something we've come across at the moment as a company. But I think the best bet would be to look at Mexican company with offices in the US, or Latin companies that have chosen to have their headquarters in the US, because they're more likely to be open to recruit senior management from Latin America, I believe.
Yeah, definitely. We currently have food industry clients from Guadalajara that have asked us to do headhunting in the US for director and up positions. So, I mean, it depends. And also right now, many clients tell us, you know what, I need someone in the US, doesn't matter where, just as if she or he is within the continental US, for example. And so it depends, but definitely there are a lot of opportunities right now for Latin Americans in general to work in the US. We have a few minutes left. So Matt, what would you like to add to this conversation?
So open-ended, Gerardo. I don't know. I think.
Anything that we may have missed, some important details, or if you'd like to just to mention again.
I personally am this way sometimes too, but I think it's important. If it's important whether you're on the applicant side or you're on the employer side to reach out, if not necessarily to me, but to any business immigration attorney, to understand your options, or to reach out to you all to understand what resources are available in other countries, just to see your options and not be hopeless when it comes to your option to immigrate to the United States or to find talent internationally. Those resources are out there, and there may be a way, it may be a creative way that you're not comfortable with or that's too expensive. But oftentimes over the results of a consultation at the very end, we find a good pathway forward, or at least some homework for the person to consider. And then if it doesn't work out, at least the person's exhausted that option and made sure that they're not leaving anything on the table.
Okay, sounds good. Justine?
Yeah,
or any other questions that you have also? I mean,
I don't have any more questions, but I do agree with what you just said, Matthew. I think that's the most important point, just being able to reach out and ask and find out about it. We've been looking into it for the last 6 months when we met you not so long ago, and we were able to answer so many questions through that conversation, very simple conversation we had. And I do believe that was the point also of this live today, getting people to hear more about this solution and know about it, so that they can see that there is possibilities to bring talent and find solutions that work for everyone and that are not that complicated. Because I have to say, before today and before we started talking with you a couple months ago, I did think the process was a lot more complicated. And then you're able to give us, ideas and ways to make it happen in a good way, in a smart way. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, definitely. So, Matthew, thanks again for your time, for being able to answer some questions from the audience. And of course, Justine, thank you so much. And to everyone that's still online, please reach out to us. Feel free to do that if you have any questions, suggestions, and we'll definitely organize another live with Matt to talk about specific topics. So let us know if you would like to hear something specific, in the next conversation. So take care, guys, and be safe.
Thank you.
Long.
Saludos.